A CBC News investigation continues to look into American executives and quarantine exemptions, as in getting around those quarantine exemptions and getting into Canada. We have learned of another exec who is allowed into the country without self-isolating. It is the president of UPS this time, the third case that CBC News has revealed in recent weeks. Jonathan Gatehouse has been investigating throughout, and he's here with the latest details. Good morning once again, Jonathan. Tell us more about the head of UPS.
Well, here we go again. Heather, we discovered this time that the president of U.S. operations for UPS, Nando Cesarone, traveled from Atlanta to Toronto last week. He was here for 3 days and held a series of meetings with employees about a new contract offer. Now, UPS tells us that Mr. Cesarone was given a special ministerial exemption from the 14-day quarantine, and that it was provided by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, François-Philippe Champagne. And what we've heard from the minister's office and his department, Global Affairs Canada, is that that department has now handed out 191 of these ministerial exemptions since the beginning of the pandemic, with 138 of those exemptions granted in just the past 6 weeks.
Some of the employees at UPS have been speaking out, and I know you've been talking to them, Jonathan. What are they telling you?
Yeah, that's true, Heather. We spoke to a number of employees at UPS, workers who were present at these meetings. They raised concerns about why Mr. Cesarone had to be in the country to do this sort of thing and why there were face-to-face meetings during a pandemic. And two of the people we spoke to told us that in one of the meetings, Cesarone actually removed his mask so that he could be better heard and spoke without a mask for a period of close to an hour. Now, the union that represents UPS workers, the Teamsters Canada, is also raising concerns about workplace safety, especially given that these drivers are considered to be essential frontline workers. They told us that they don't understand why the government would approve such an exemption given the current circumstances. Opposition politicians are also weighing in. And here's what Jack Harris, the NDP critic for public safety, had to tell us.
I don't see the necessity to have some special exemption like this. After all, even within Canada, you know, I can't go to Ottawa and come back to St. John's, Newfoundland without a 14-day exemption. We have workers from Newfoundland doing the same thing, coming back to work and having to have a 14-day quarantine here. This idea of behind closed doors, non-transparent ministerial exemptions where you have to dig around to find out why it's happening, that's not fair to Canadians, and I don't think Canadians would accept that. It's fair and reasonable.
Jack Harris, as he speaks about his objections to all of this, what is the federal government itself saying this time, Jonathan, about this exemption?
Well, they're not saying much at all, Heather. We went out and reached out to Global Affairs Canada. They refused to discuss the specifics of Cesarone's exemption, citing the Privacy Act. But there's an important distinction here between this story and the previous cases that you mentioned that we uncovered. Those other cases where executives from Uline and Costco came into Canada and were waived from quarantine, the federal government said that that was done by frontline border service agents and that it was a mistake. In this case, what we have is a formal application process and an approval from the highest levels in Ottawa. Champagne's office says that ministerial exemptions are only granted under exceptional circumstances and have to be thoroughly justified in terms of the immediacy of the need to travel to Canada. We also asked UPS about this, and they too refused to comment, but they did say that Cesarone followed all the necessary health protocols and while he was here in Canada, including being tested, masking, and keeping his social distance.
Jonathan, thank you again for this as you continue to investigate. That is Jonathan Gatehouse.